So next question was, I have a competitor who has a very generic business name that contains some keywords in it who is ranking above me. What are some ways to leverage the brand name to increase rankings for service and branded search results? So you're asking, I'm not sure I follow the question.
No.
Maybe he's asking what are some ways to leverage his own brand name, or are you talking about leveraging your competitor's brand name, which is generic? I'm assuming you're talking about your project's brand name. That's a good question, Marco. I mean, just what we talk about with the SEO Shield and powering up the entity, and eventually, and then local GMB Pro, especially if you're talking about the, well, I don't know, he's not talking about the Maps pack, but RYS. So essentially the SEO Shield, and then what we talk about for powering up the entity, which is all included to everything that we do is about, it's entity-based SEO. And eventually you should, I mean, it doesn't even have to be eventually. If you're pretty aggressive about it, you ought to be able to overcome that relatively quickly as you build authority to your brand, because Google is absolutely in favor of brands over generic, websites and keyword-based stuff now. So, Marco, what do you say?
Well, it's what we teach, right? You create a brand that's marketable, a brand that's identifiable, a brand. I talked to my Direwolf group on the mini mastermind group on Tuesday night, and I always tell them about, and I can't remember which tribe it was, which Native American tribe, but they wanted a remembered fight. All right, so if they were going to go to war with somebody else, they wanted it to be something that was going to be spoken of, like through the generations. When they were telling stories, they wanted that fight to be told. And this is what I have in my mind when I'm looking at a brand, when I'm looking to brand something, is make it memorable, make it a remembered brand, so that when you create the brand plus keyword association, the idea then is to relate all of those keywords to that brand, because that's how Google became a verb. That's how Xerox, to Xerox something, became a verb. A zipper became a noun and a verb, to zip, correct? Mm-hmm. And so when you're doing these things and when you're creating the brand plus keyword relationship, which is what we teach, and then you branch off into creating all of the keyword relevance into the categories, you continue the siloing, that's when you're going to outrank the person who has pigeonholed himself under this generic business name with either an exact match or a partial match, or by including the location in the brand. Because you're definitely pigeonholed when you're doing that. You want to keep it so broad that you can branch out to anything you want. Amazon started, guys, the story of Amazon is so fantastic when we're discussing this, because Amazon started out as a bookstore. It was supposed to be an online bookstore. You got to remember that. You got to remember the story of Jeff Bezos losing millions of dollars every year until Amazon became what it became. But why was he able to branch out into all of these different things? Or now it's like you used to go to the corner store to look for something, or to the clothing store, or whatever. You go to Amazon and you look for anything you want. How was he able to do that? He called the fucker Amazon. They called it Google. They called it Yahoo. A Yahoo, we don't know what a Yahoo is, right? But you call that, well, a foolish person. Let's just leave it at that. But all of these memorable, remembered brands and other brands that simply just go by the wayside because they're not memorable. So when you're looking to do this, is exactly what we teach in RYS Academy Reloaded, and what we've been teaching forever. I mean, for at least over 5 years, before all of this entity thing started on the web, when it became a big deal, we were already teaching it. Brand plus keyword relationships. If you are local, then you go brand plus location plus keyword. Not necessarily in that order, but you get the idea of what it is that you have to do. And then you start pushing power. You start categorizing. You start extending your drive stack and G site. You start creating the extensions to mirror your money site. There's so many things that you can do when you're doing this, because you're not pigeonholed into that specific name. You can just make it anything you want. It's remembered.
That's right. Our name is Semantic Mastery, and it has been since we formed our corporation in 2013, I guess it was. And so we were a bit ahead of the curve on that. We saw it coming way back then, the semantic web. And so we even optimized our own name for that. And for actually for a few years there, the first few years that Semantic Mastery was a corporation, I thought that we might have misjudged because it was a lot slower to roll out the semantic web or for Google to adopt the semantic web than what we initially thought. But here we are in the thick of things now. So I think it was a good call on our part.